some landscaping here in its infancy, and I am tired of moving rocks around. So I figured what a great time to go for a ride. You are watching the Iron Ridge Outdoors channel, and in my hand I have two Suzuki quad keys. Now, while these quad keys have not changed in 16 years, the quads that they belong to most definitely have. On the right, I've got a 2015 KingQuad 500, and on the left, I have a 1999 QuadRunner Suzuki 500. Both of these are 500cc quads, both of them are four-wheel drive, but they are vastly different. In this video, I'm going to kind of ride the two, talk about the differences. Should you buy a brand new quad? This is my father's quad. Or should you buy a used quad? Now, I got lucky. This was a friend's quad growing up next door to me. My neighbor had quads, and he has since sold me this one. And also, when my kid is old enough, you have seen in previous videos the fun little TRX 70. So I have his quad. It's old and it's used, but it still runs very well. And my dad's quad, basically brand new. I'm sure that in 2015, since 2018, I don't think that they have changed very much with the model. So let's ride the two, do a little comparison. One of these days, I'm going to get a camera mounted system for my helmet. Today is not that day, so right now I'm straddling the tripod on this quad. Not sure how the audio is going to work out, not sure if you're going to be able to hear me over the engine noise, but this right here is what I have affectionately dubbed the Loamy Loop. See if you can get that sign into focus. It is a 3/4 mile track that kind of circumvents my property lines, and it is going to be an awesome test bed for future videos on reviewing various motorized vehicles. Oh, it's bumpy. That camera is not going to stay still. The cool part of this track is that it has various different types of terrain. You got the sandy stuff that we're in, and then it goes to more grassy areas. On the far side, it'll get into a lot more rocks. It has open stretches, it has tight turns. So let's quickly go over the features of this 2015 KingQuad 500. Now, it is a 4x4. It is a 500 liquid-cooled engine. It has EFI, which right there, the difference between EFI and carburetions on toys like this, EFI is vastly superior, in my opinion, namely because they don't clog up. Quads with a carburetor, these are not vehicles that you're driving every single day. Now, if you're driving them every single day, it's not as big of a deal. One of the issues is when you let that gas sit, and unless you're running ethanol free, you're going to get particulates in your gas, and those particulates are going to clog up your jets and your venturis in the carburetor, and then you got to take it apart, pull out the carburetor, clean out the jets. And on something like this, where you've got to take off plastic parts, it could be a 2, 3, 4 hour job depending on the design of the quad and how easy it is to access that carburetor. Needless to say, it is a pain, especially for something that you're not driving every day. Another difference with that EFI is that you're not going to have any effect from elevation. So this right now, we're at 3,200 feet or so. If I take this down to the beach, which I probably would never do, but if I wanted to, you would see no difference in the EFI quad. Now, if you go back to the carbureted quad, what's going to happen is you can either set it for 3,000 feet or you can set it for sea level. And if you do sea level, and then like right now, I'm pretty sure my quad is actually jetted for sea level, that old QuadRunner 500. And so you'll hear it backfire and pop every once in a while when we're up here at elevation. So in the 16-year difference, EFI is definitely a thumbs up. Another big thumbs up is the size of the quad. You'll notice that overall difference in the size of the two quads. When you're on top of this one, you feel worlds higher. You feel like you're more sitting on top of the quad. The quad has a bigger dimension overall. Now, if you're in a tight quarters situation, that could be either a positive or a negative. Generally out here, the added stability is definitely a welcome sight. Another thing that I'm really liking about this quad is the ground clearance. Now, part of that is to do with independent rear suspension versus the older quads all have a solid axle in the rear, and that also has its plus and minuses. The solid axle is definitely going to be more robust and a stronger design. However, for something like this, when you're not going to be, it depends on how you use it, honestly. Less drifting on this, right? The other one, if you had a two-wheel drive quad, which the other one is only, it's an all-time four-wheel drive, so it's not too much drifting going on anyways, but the slidey bits on this one aren't nearly as stable as if you had one with a solid rear axle. That being said, the added ground clearance on this is definitely what I would choose, what I would prefer. You definitely have much more ground clearance compared to the older one, especially on these sidewalls right here. The other 500, it's about another 2.5, 3 inches lower than this one. And when you're going over these big rocks, they can, or big stumps like that, you'll definitely notice the difference. On to the controls of the KingQuad 500. You've got an LCD display, your gas gauge, which is definitely nice to have. You'll notice it's an automatic. You've got high, low, reverse, and neutral on the gear select. And over here, you have a push button four-wheel drive with a diff lock. Now, other quads I have ridden, like I think I rode a 2004, 2005 Yamaha Kodiak, and it had your diff lock for your front and for your rear. Now, I don't know for certain if this is locking all of them, if this is only locking your rear or only locking your front. My guess, though, is that it's only locking your rear differential. Unless you're really in some crazy mud or some super deep snow, it's not going to be a hindrance. I've never actually had to use the diff lock, even in the deep snow. So it's a hit or miss, pro or con. Less complexity, but it is a nice feature to have the diff locks for sure. You can see on here we do have an aftermarket winch. It is a Warn, but it was installed at the factory. That was a added accessory that my father bought. On this side over here, you do have a very tiny cargo box. You've got about probably 5 or 6 inches of depth and maybe 2 inches surrounding that. So it can fit maybe your wallet, a tiny toolbox, maybe a wrench or two in there. They'd have to be small. It's not very useful. You can tell there's nothing on it, which brings me to this. Definitely this is aftermarket. I believe this is Cabela's bag on here. Really nice. My dad put it on there, and so far it's been very robust. One aspect of the quad that I'm not super stoked about is the suspension. Now, I know it's slightly adjustable, and you can see it's on one of the looser settings, but it is very loose. Now, I'm a heavier guy. I'm about 220 pounds, but this suspension feels very soft. So on one side, that's nice. If you're putzing around, that soft suspension really soaks up all the undulating terrain and the big rocks. However, when you're trying to go at a little bit faster pace, you really feel this thing tilt and awe, and it doesn't have very much rebound, so you'll come out of a turn and you'll kind of have the whole wobble effect even once you're on the straight. Not really a big issue, because like I said, this is not a race quad. You're not trying to go super fast on this quad. It's more of a workhorse, what it had intended. So I think for this application, the softer suspension is not necessarily such a hindrance. If it were mine, I definitely would stiffen up the suspension, especially when you're towing. I use this to tow every once in a while, hook up the trailer. Namely, I'll do like these rocks if I'm collecting them for that landscaping project. But this back end will really like to squat. That's where on the other quad, that solid axle is a little bit better for towing because there's no suspension when you have the hitch hooked up directly to the axle. This is definitely the rockier section of the track. A little bit downhill. Some big bumps here. More rocks. Oh, really rocky. Tight turn here. Downhill and some loose bark dust type stuff. More of that loamy sand. Deep ruts. A little bit of a grassier section through here. If you're going really fast, you'll catch air at this spot. A little more compact, grassy area. Tight turn. This is where it gets almost beach-like in this loamy sand. Very, very loose sand through this section, big ruts. This is especially hard on a dirt bike. Your front tire just wants to plow and your back tire just fishtails all over the place. Sure, this camera sucks at picking this all up. Oh, slow, very slow through here. Crossing the driveway into some more grassy section. Driving one-handed, right arm is very sore. Catch air here, got careful not to tip it in that turn. Tight turn, a big long straight. Usually can get up to about 25-30 miles per hour before you gotta hit the brakes in this section. Couple tight turns until the home stretch. Oh, some loose, very tight turn, big ruts through here. Very big ruts through here. And we finish coming back to the start of the lap. Let's see what that looks like. One last thing about the KingQuad 500 is with the engine and the torque curve. I feel like with this transmission and engine combination, the off-the-line torque isn't what I would want or expect on a utility quad like this. So if I were to turn this on here, maybe I can show you what I'm saying. So I'm going to hit the gas full throttle, and there'll be kind of a delay, and then it won't go very fast until you get about 10 miles per hour, and then the power really hits in and you get a good thump. Alright, here's a little bit of a straight right here. I'll show you what I mean. So full throttle. And I don't know if you noticed, we'll do it again, and watch, you can almost hear the engine finally start to kick in at about 10 miles per hour. So full throttle. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a slouch or anything, but there's just a definitely a large delay when you hit the throttle, and it doesn't just immediately have a nice grunt like you'd want it to. You can hear it right there. Hit that 10 miles per hour, and then it says, okay, it's time to go. Every time. It's like not peeling out the tires in the back, and I know that has to do with the automatic transmission. But you'd expect it to on this loose stuff to just tear it up. I know it's got the power to do it, it's just higher up in the power band. So let's do a quick sum up of the Suzuki KingQuad, the 2015. It is a very plush ride, very soft suspension, it's got good ground clearance, it's got a very peppy engine, but that pep doesn't hit until a little bit higher up in the power band once you kind of get some speed. So for low-end torque, it definitely leaves something to be desired. You cannot beat the EFI reliability. So far it's been an excellent quad, zero issues whatsoever, and it's definitely been ridden out here. Trying to think how many miles are on this guy. It's got 42 hours almost 375, 360 miles or so. Fun quad, definitely at the price point that my dad scored it at. I think, like I said, about $5,500 out the door. Definitely a good buy. Sometimes I'm amazed by my own genius. This is going to work. I've got a children's size helmet that's way too small for my head, a piece of juniper that I had sanded into a circular shape for a different project, and I have a very cheap Walmart cell phone holder that's meant to mount to a bicycle handle, and then I've milled out this spot right here so the camera can aim through. Gonna work. Blow me loop. Time to do a hot lap. On your marks, get set, go. First up was the 2015 Suzuki 500. Next up is the 1999 Suzuki 500 QuadRunner. Now both are liquid cooled, both are shaft driven, both have four-wheel drive capabilities. However, this one is all-time four-wheel drive. You can see that it also, the big difference, it has a shifter on there. There's your shift pattern. They'll focus on it. It's not wanting to focus. But it is, there you go. Neutral on the down, and then when you got 5 up from there, reverse if you're neutral, you pull that back, it'll hit into reverse. And if you want low, you can pull that up, switch into the low gearing. You have another 5 gears in the low range as well. Now this is a carbureted beast, and since it is carbureted, it's had some carburetor issues in the past. The previous owner has had the carburetor gone through, so right now it's got a pretty clean one. And anytime you're buying a used vehicle, especially one this old, you're just gonna have some little quirks. This one namely being the seat, of course. This tire annoyingly only holds air for about a day. I just pumped it up yesterday, and you can see today it is flat. So that has to be pumped up every time you want to use it. You can see it has a solid rear axle as opposed to the independent rear suspension I was talking about on the other one. And I will say for towing, you can see how that tow hitch is directly to the axle, so there's no give on the tongue when you're towing. It makes it a little bit more stable. One thing I don't know if you'll be able to notice in this video, but it is dimensionally smaller, the whole quad is, which makes it nice for getting into some of the tighter trails. On the other hand, what is also dimensionally smaller, as previously stated, is that ground clearance. And I've noted that sometimes this section right here will grab rocks, ruts, stumps, and etc. Up here we also have some old school grill protector there. We got the lights, again a worn winch, it's all aftermarket. As far as miles on this guy, 2,600 miles on the odometer. It's been a great quad, but it definitely has its quirks. The other annoying bit, as you can see my extension cord right here, runs into the shop. I have it going up and over, and it kind of runs down into a splitter, and then I can direct from there. The problem is this chintzy Harbor Freight guy does not run off of the extension cord, so I have to literally walk it all the way over to the house, hook it up there, pump it up, which is what I'm doing right now. Swinging a leg over the QuadRunner, and you'll notice immediately my short shorts. It feels so much smaller. My knees, I don't know how much you're seeing this in the camera right now. My knees are way higher up. Almost like in a, not sport bike obviously, but more of that position with higher up knees. The other thing you'll notice is that it's pretty washy, pretty loose suspension, and you can definitely tell it doesn't have as much suspension travel as the newer one. Starting her up, she always starts up very nicely. And then you shift her into first, that's one up. And first gear is tall. Not. You can feel it's got a lot of low end grunt. But first gear does not have a lot of room to play around in. So if you shift it from second, if I'm in second now, from a standstill, it still has plenty of grunt to get up and going. Oh, I can't turn! That front end plows a lot more. Steering is not as light. That all-time four-wheel drive really makes you dig into the handlebars. That's a third gear pull right there. Third gear. Still got the grunt to get it going. That rack on the back is very noisy. Alright, so I just did a little warm-up lap and some quick notes on the performance of this guy. As you saw that very first turn, that front end just wanted to plow in, and the way you can correct on the other quad, because it's got two-wheel drive, is just kind of shift your weight, flick the throttle, and that ass end will come back around. This one doesn't have the ability to do that because it's on that all-time all-wheel drive. The other thing is, this is all low-end grunt, which is honestly what you'd want, what you'd expect in a utility quad like this, because you're mainly going to be going on maybe a little bit tougher terrain, doing work around the farm, not necessarily going to be racing really fast. And so the top end on this is just really lacking for power, but it's honestly not a bad thing because that's not how intended this was to be used. So let's do a hot lap. I'm a little scared. Even on that slow warm-up, I still was getting it on two wheels. It's just not meant to be going on these super tight, speedy tracks like this. I could see it right when you start getting into those ruts. You hit the ruts, and without the ability to get your back end to slide out, it just wants to dig in, and it digs into those ruts. And if you miscalculate that, whoop, you're right over. The other thing that's not necessarily great on this is the shifter on it. Now there's no clutch on this, you know, it's kind of like the semi-automatic No clutch at all. This is just your rear brake, and that's your front brake. And this shifter is heavy. Heavy. To upshift, you really gotta like use there's no heel action. You can't just like lift your toe up like this. No. It's your entire leg lifts up to try and get that to upshift. Downshift isn't too bad because you've got your weight to act upon it, but straight upshifting, it's not like a dirt bike. If it were more like a dirt bike where it's just nice, you can just kind of flick it into gear, it wouldn't be that much of an issue, but it's not. It's, I never thought I'd say this. I actually prefer the automatic on the other quad, on a quad like this. Blasphemy, right? I would never even drive an automatic car. I hate automatics. I'm a manual till the end, but this is not a true manual. There's no clutch. I've driven sport bikes with, real manual gearboxes, and there's more finesse to it. This is so tractor-like. All right, enough talking. Low me loop time. Let's see what we can put the time up at. So I'm gonna have to go back in the film and see what my other time was. My timer, I'm just using the camera. I'm guessing it was around 2:35, 2:38 somewhere. This is gonna be a little bit slower. Let's see how much slower. First gear. All right, Marks. Get set. Go. This thing worked so well. Awesome. Now for the big question, which one would you buy? You can hear the rain on my tin roof here. Well, that depends how much money you got. I do like this one better, the new one, obviously. Now, if I had the choice, I would always pick this one every single time. That doesn't mean, however, that I don't absolutely love this one. This is like a tractor, and this is like, well, I don't know. What's one of those minivan crossover SUV things? Like a Ford Escape, right? It's not fast. It's not great. But it's pretty dang good. It gets you from point A to point B. This one is slow. It's old school. But I feel like it's robust. This engine, I feel like it's going to last forever. It sounds great. Will this one also be just as robust as this one potentially? But people love these guns. They absolutely love this model year. There's so many still out there going, and for the price that I paid, I stole it. You know, granted, I got the friend price of $2,000. Now, I could probably turn this around and sell it right now for an additional $1,000 and make some good money. I won't, because I use it, I need it, and I enjoy it. That being said, if you were to look at used ones, and the killer thing about used quads, I don't know about where you're at, but up here, the used prices don't justify, they're almost like Toyota Tacomas. They're insanely overpriced, in my opinion. A used quad, so you know, let's say you had this quad right here. He could probably sell this, my father could probably sell it for $4,500 and it would be gone. He paid $5,000 or $54,000 or something around there. To me, that doesn't make any sense. I would rather spend the extra $1,000 and get a brand spanking new one than buy a used one on Craigslist for $4,500. Whereas this guy, $2,000, I mean, if you're on a budget, go this route anytime. The difference is, I knew this was owned by a mechanic, a good friend. He took care of his stuff. And he did leave it out in the sun and crack that, but that's not a big issue. Mechanically, I know that this is sound, so I do have that going on. And I know that a lot of people don't buy used stuff because you just don't know the history. I knew the history of this. I was riding this when I was 10 years old. I've known it. I grew up next to it. I get that. However, for $2,000, and there are deals on Craigslist. They come up all the time. They're just not always immediately there. This one, it's still good. I think for $5,000, like I said, if I had money, if money were not an issue, I wouldn't buy either of these. You know, I'd buy a higher end one. But if you got $5,000 to play with and you can buy a used Honda Foreman, or you can buy this brand new, I'd take this all day. So I hope you guys had fun with that. I really enjoyed riding. I'm going to put up the times on the Lomi Loop, see what they were at. Thanks for watching.